This test is called Pronator Teres test. The purpose of this test is to determine the possibility of a Pronator Teres syndrome. A Pronator Teres syndrome is compression of the median nerve as it travels deep to the Pronator Teres muscle. We know that the median nerve has a distribution into the palmar surface of the hand on the lateral side, the first digit, the second digit, third digit, and the lateral half of the fourth digit. We also know that the median nerve will innervate the majority of the flexors of the wrist, predominantly the ones that are located more central in the forearm and onto the lateral side. And we also know that it will control flexion of the lateral digits. So, what makes us want to do this test to begin with? The client is complaining of numbness, tingling, and altered sensation into the median nerve distribution. They may express weakness with wrist flexion. They also may experience weakness with digit flexion. They may be also complaining of dexterity issues associated with the hand. We also know that Pronator Teres syndrome is typically going to be confused with carpal tunnel syndrome, especially if someone is only listening to the subjective information from the client. It is not doing any type of palpation testing or orthopedic testing to determine the source of the compression of the median nerve. Let's take a look at the anatomy. So here we can see the anterior surface of the right forearm. We know our pronator teres muscle is going to have an attachment site on the medial epicondyle of the humerus, also an attachment site on the coronoid process of the ulna, and then it will attach onto the lateral shaft of the radius. Let's drop the muscles in so we can take a look at the muscular anatomy. So here we can see our pronator teres muscle. Now that we have the muscles in place, we're going to highlight that for you as we can see. We also know that the median nerve is going to run deep to this muscle. So let's take a look at the nerve pathway. So we can see here traveling is our median nerve on this anterior surface of the forearm. And then you can see it moving towards the medial side of the elbow, then moving superiorly on the medial side of the arm. We're going to highlight that median nerve, that way you can better identify it. So you can see it there now in the purple color. Now when we put the muscles in place, we can see how this can easily be compressed under our pronator teres muscle. So now that we have our muscles back in place, we can see our pronator teres muscle right here. And deep to that is going to be our median nerve. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take this muscle and we're going to fade it out. That way you can see through that muscle and see the orientation of the nervous tissue. Now that we've got a little bit of a closer view, we've faded out our pronator teres muscle so you can see through it. And now as you can see, our median nerve is traveling here, and then it's going to run deep to the pronator teres muscle. So if we have any increased tension in pronator teres muscle, this can create a compressive force against the median nerve. Let's take a look at the test. To perform this test, the patient or client will be in a seated or standing position. The therapist will have the client's elbow flexed at 90 degrees. The form can be either supinated or it can be in a mid-pronated position. The therapist will then grasp the distal forearm. This hand contact will be used to resist pronation of the forearm. The therapist can also use a palpation hand onto the pronator teres muscle. During this isometric contraction of a pronation, the therapist will also passively extend the elbow simultaneously. Let's take a look at the test.
This is Pronator Teres test. So for this, I'm going to hold on to my client's wrist, and I'm going to resist her pronation while passively extending her elbows.
So this isometric contraction of pronation will increase the amount of tension in the pronator teres muscle underneath the therapist's hand. This will create a compressive force against the median nerve. If this muscle is already holding tension, then it's potentially already creating that compression, and then by way of the isometric contraction will further increase the amount of compressive force.
So go ahead and pronate.
Now let's watch the test again in full.
This is Pronator Teres test. So for this, I'm going to hold on to my client's wrist, and I'm going to resist her pronation while passively extending her elbow. So go ahead and pronate.
A positive sign would be numbness, tingling, or altered sensation in the median nerve distribution. So the lateral portion of the palm into the first digit, into the second digit, into the third digit, and into the lateral half of the fourth digit. The patient may be complaining of this numbness, tingling sensation in any parts of this distribution pattern.